I think the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops has frankly not been a good partner in common sense immigration enforcement that the American people voted for. And I hope, again, as a devout Catholic, that they'll do better.
Hello everyone, I'm Joseph Dinesh, a Catholic commentator from Sydney, Australia. Today I want to talk about a topic that has been stirring up quite a bit of debate. Vice President JD Vance, critic of the US Conference of Catholic Bishops. In a recent interview on Face the Nation, Vance expressed frustration with the bishops for their criticism of the Trump administration's immigration policies, particularly ICE raids conducted in sensitive places like churches and schools. The bishops argued that these actions could instill fear in vulnerable communities and undermine the trust between pastors and their congregations. When confronted with the bishops' statements, JD Vance did not hold back. He strongly questioned their intentions, accusing them of taking one-sided approach to the issue. So let's watch the clip of his remarks, and afterward, I will share my thoughts on his criticism and how it measures up against Catholic teaching. Let's listen.
The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops this week condemned some of the executive orders signed by President Trump, specifically those allowing immigration and customs enforcement to enter churches and to enter schools. Do you personally support the idea of conducting a raid or enforcement action in a church service, at a school?
Well, let me address this. Of course, if you have a person who is convicted of a violent crime, whether they're an illegal immigrant or a non-illegal immigrant, you have to go and get that person to protect the public safety. That's not unique to immigration. But let me just address this particular issue, Margaret, because as a practicing Catholic, I was actually heartbroken by that statement. And I think that the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops needs to actually look in the mirror a little bit and recognize that when they receive over $100 million to help resettle illegal immigrants, are they worried about humanitarian concerns, or are they actually worried about their bottom line? We are going to enforce immigration law. We're going to protect the American people.
Yeah.
Donald Trump promised to do that. And I believe the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, if they're worried about the humanitarian costs of immigration enforcement, let them talk about the children who have been sex trafficked because of the wide open border of Joe. I support us doing law enforcement against violent criminals, whether they're illegal immigrants or anybody else, in a way that keeps us safe. Let me ask this question, Margaret. Let's separate the immigration issue. If you had a violent murderer in a school, of course I want law enforcement to go and get that person out.
Of course.
So what's the point of the question?
You changed the regulation this week. That's the point of the question.
Exactly.
Giving the authority to go into churches and go into schools.
We empowered law enforcement to enforce the law everywhere to protect Americans.
Effect, a chilling effect, arguably, to people to not send their kids to school.
I desperately hope it has a chilling effect on illegal immigrants coming into our country.
You think the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops are actively hiding criminals?
I think the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops has frankly not been a good partner in common sense immigration enforcement that the American people voted for. And I hope, again, as a devout Catholic, that they'll do better.
Before diving into JD Vance's criticism, I think it's important to start with some context about what the Catholic Church teaches on immigration. The Church teaches that every nation has the right to define and defend its borders. At the same time, nations also have a moral responsibility to show compassion toward refugees and asylum seekers, especially those fleeing persecution. Keeping this in mind will help us better understand Vance's points. First, let's talk about Vance's observation on the priorities of some Catholic bishops. He makes a strong case that while they seem deeply concerned about immigration enforcement under the Trump administration, they have been relatively quiet over the last 4 years on other critical issues. These include serious crimes like child trafficking, drug smuggling, and violence, some of which have been linked to illegal immigrants. Vance essentially asks, if the bishops genuinely care about the well-being of illegal immigrants, why haven't they spoken out against the harm caused by these issues? It's a valid question, and one that highlights what many see as a double standard. Next, Vance zeroes in on the issue of money. He points out that organizations like Catholic Charities USA receive significant federal funding to provide services like food, shelter, and legal aid to immigrants, including those here illegally. Now, while this work is undoubtedly valuable, Vance suggests that the financial considerations might play a role in the bishop's criticism of immigration policies. Could it be that they are worried about losing federal funding if deportations lead to fewer people needing their services? It's a provocative question and one that invites us to consider whether advocacy is entirely rooted in moral responsibility or if there is more to it. Finally, Vance challenges what he sees as a one-sided approach from the Catholic Church leaders on immigration. While they emphasize compassion for refugees and asylum seekers, Vance argues they often overlook a nation's right to secure its borders and enforce its laws. It becomes even more contentious, he says, when church leaders advocate for protecting illegal immigrants from government enforcement, which in effect supports breaking the law. He raises a powerful hypothetical. If the church leaders support illegal immigrants breaking immigration laws, would they also support Catholics breaking tax laws? It's a tough question that forces us to think about where compassion ends and respect for the law begins. To wrap things up, I want to bring attention to a statement made by the USCCB in 2003. This offers a more balanced perspective on immigration and is worth comparing to their recent stance. It reads, "The Catholic Church recognizes the right of sovereign nations to control their borders in a just and reasonable way. Nations have the right to enforce laws that regulate immigration and protect the common good of their citizens. However, this right must be balanced with the obligation to respect the human dignity and rights of migrants and refugees." I hope this video is helpful. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. God bless you.